This is another Poets at War General Report. And here's your General, Joshua David Ling.
Good luck.
Hey everybody, what's up? How's it going? So that was a thing. New intros, new all kinds of stuff. I have a new control panel down here I'm going to be showing you guys soon. It does a lot of cool stuff, and yeah, I'm just playing around with lots of new technology. But today I wanted to go into a topic, and I really haven't rehearsed this much, but then again, what's new on General's Report? Specifically in regard to a question that was brought up in the controversy corner of Logosophiia magazine. The word I was actually not familiar with previous to getting into it with Logosophiia, and that happens among just the different vocabularies of different denominations and that sort of a thing amongst Christians. Concupiscence, something of that nature. And generally the way I understand it, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, is the idea of, is it wrong or right or whatever for there to be, desires, particularly, secondarily gluttonous, I find, but primarily sexually lustful. This is obviously a more adult topic, so I know some people aren't going to want to, hear this. Some people aren't going to want their kids to hear it. Whatever. I'm going to talk about it. I think that there's, and I was speaking in this, controversy corner. My job is to speak from the perspective of someone within my denomination, not necessarily a leader, but someone who, it's partly my view, but I'm also partly representing. So I'm in the PCA. I tend to be more toward like the CREC kind of crowd. I tend to be more toward the RPCNA in some ways, but also not, I'm Reformed Presbyterian. And so it's a thing where, I don't know, there's a lot going on right now in the PCA and other circles where Presbyterians are folding over sexual lust issues. There's also, circles where people are immediately ostracized and cut off from the church for sexual sins in ways that are essentially treating them predatorily, even if it's not a predatory, thing that brings it about. And my issue is this, we go back to the Puritans, which are obviously important to the Presbyterian faith in general. We're connected with a lot of our Reformed Anglican brothers even today. But the point that really needs to be made is that they were not puritanical in the way we use that word today. They wore bright clothes. They sang exuberant songs. And a lot of the people who came after them kind of started being the more fundamentalistic sort of crowd. They wrote tons of poetry, gorgeous, beautiful poetry about the Lord and about his church and about the victory of the gospel. And one of the things that happened in the Reformation that a lot of people discount is, things like Martin Luther marrying Katie and springing her from the nunnery. And this is a Protestant ethic that we're not trying to in any way put down marriage. In fact, we're promoting marriage as the norm, marriage and healthy sexual relationship through marriage. And, we go back to people like Augustine, who Presbyterians will quote all the time. He kind of had a weird view of sex, as if it was, something that was only, it was a necessary evil to continue the human race. It was, you should never have fun doing it if you can help it. And there's a lot of people throughout history that have had this sort of view as well. And I think it's very clear scripturally we're to, multiply and fill the earth. There's a dominion mandate. And on top of that, there's a way to do it within marriage, right? And this is the thing. You can say clearly that there is evil in the world, and you can say that there is sexual lustful evil, and this is the boundaries that God has put it in, while also stating that that is a broad, amazing, and beautiful state of matrimony that God gave for the enjoyment of his people, for the joy of sex, of being with your wife, of the love and expression of that love that comes out of it. This is a good gift that existed far before the fall. And we were given appetites, both food and lust and all these other sorts of things, as a good thing that got twisted. It got put in a place there where it wasn't supposed to be. So if you are right with God, you need to enjoy the things that he has given you. In fact, it's somewhat of an insult to God to not be partaking of those things. Now, there's times to fast. There's times to, not get married. Paul's clear on that. And I think a lot of people take that way out of context and say that in every situation, it's always better to be single. I don't believe that's what Paul was saying at all. I believe what Paul was saying in that passage pretty clearly is that they were dealing with the apocalypse of the church at that time. And I use that word very sincerely. This was the end of the Jewish era. This was the end of the sacrificial system and the temple in Jerusalem and everything else. And he was very clear. Luke is very clear on this. You head for the hills when this stuff starts happening, right? And Paul was saying it's better to be single because you don't have to worry about saving your wife and kids. You can just get out of there, right? You don't have to worry about your kids. You don't have to worry about your extended family, right? And so I think Paul would definitely be on the same page here as far as all this stuff. Now, it's one of these things where, sure, there are people who are called to singlehood, but when you're called to singlehood, it's not necessarily for lack of trying. You know what I mean? It's something that God has given you to do even for a time, and then things change, like Martin Luther. He found Katie. Katie found him, really, and kind of, said, hey, if you better put your money where your mouth is if you really believe this, if you really believe that these vows that have been pushed on us by the church are untrue. And so all of this coming together, I think it's actually disingenuous and what's the term? It is essentially slapping God in the face when he's giving you a gift to not be actively seeking the goodness that he's given you in this world. That includes food, sex within marriage, friends. A lot of people say they can do church on their own. That's not true. There's fellowship, there's goodness, there's stories, there's parties, there's exuberance that exists in this world, these joys that God gives us. And this is very clear in the scripture. We're supposed to rejoice. It's all through the Psalms and all through the Old and New Testament. Again, I say rejoice, right? That's what Paul says. And so I just want to make sure that we're fighting the evil, twisted version of sexuality with the positive, good, and wonderful, the way it was meant to be version of sexuality, especially in today's age. Especially in today's age. That's the way you fight it. There's so many people who think that they can just remove themselves from sexuality, and you can't. You were made a sexual creature. And so that's kind of what I wanted to write for Logo Sophia magazine, but Controversy Corner is a very little tiny snippet of the magazine, and I didn't want to take up the entire magazine with those words. So this has been Poets at War, or not Poets, well, yeah, the General's Report, Poets at War. It's a sub show. And hopefully this outro works, this new outro. Let's see, where's my button here? Here we go. Check this out, y'all. God of songs.